Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to our second KFAM live stream. I can't believe it's been a month already. Time flies so fast. Before we start, I did want to let everyone know some exciting news that all of our live streams will also be available as podcasts on the 3 following platforms, which is on YouTube, on Spotify, and on Apple. So we'll put up that information in the chat room. If you're interested in listening, maybe viewing us is not your thing, but yeah, so we're available on different platforms now. But today we're going to be talking about anxiety, and we're happy to invite one of KFAM's therapists, T.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Shanna.
Yeah, of course. So thank you, T, for joining us. Could you maybe introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with KFAM for about a year as of March, but I'm currently working as a therapist here, but I'm more of a abolitionist social worker. I come from a social work background, acknowledging the kind of impacts and the harms that social workers have done in the community, and also finding ways that we can improve upon our current modalities. So those are the things that I think about a lot when I'm here.
Great. So then, can I ask, how did you come to work at KFAM or work with the Korean American community?
Yeah. So prior to being at KFAM, I was working as a crisis responder at a suicide prevention hotline up in the Bay, in nearby San Francisco, for about 6 years. And at that time, I also was got acquainted with the Korean Community Center in the East Bay, which is their version of kind of KFAM, but kind of geared towards more API community members. So I really had and as a person who was born in Korea, but I grew up in the States mostly, and was pretty much disconnected from the Korean culture. So I had a desire to live in K-Town in LA at some point, because this was this is the closest experience that I've had with Korea. Yeah. And I think that, so it was pretty much I was driven to support the communities in K-Town. So I think that's how I naturally found KFAM. So I live and pretty close by as well.
Yeah, that's great. So could you maybe share a little bit about our mental health department at KFAM then?
Absolutely. So I'm with the mental health department. There's many different departments at KFAM, but for the mental health, there's 9 clinicians. Currently, we all have a caseload that varies from 10 to about 25, 27. So we offer clinical counseling, and we also offer medication support services for psychotropics. And also the clinicians oftentimes do take on some level of case management to support our clients.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes KFAM stand out from other organizations is that it's all in-house. You don't have to go out to another organization to get your medication or any of that, is my understanding.
No, that's absolutely true. And I think that's what is one of the things that I feel most proud of KFAM's mental health, because especially with the clients that we serve, there's I think the mental health department really tries to mitigate and also minimize the barriers to access as much as possible. Yeah, and I can speak a little further about it if you want me to.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. So I guess then, without going into specifics, what kind of populations do you see coming in to get help?
Yeah, so usually it's a lot of folks wanting to work on relational issues. So there's, of course, individual counseling, but we also serve couples. There's also family units. So those are the main 3 groups. And we also serve children. So there's no age limit at this time. So we serve anywhere between children, adolescents, young adults to adults and older adults.
Yeah, great. So then, can anyone receive services from KFAM?
That's a good question. So we, for the government-funded programs, there are criteria, and one has to be, folks have to be a resident of LA County. However, for other folks who might, as long as they live in California, they can also sign up for services that's self-pay, and it's sliding scale, as long as you're within California. Yeah.
And then I believe we offer services in person, of course, but also virtually?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so that's another thing that I really appreciate, which is, again, increasing access and removing barriers. So we, of course, LA County is massive, so we definitely have folks who might be living in Diamond Heights, for instance, but they can access us by like virtual services. So we offer telehealth or like services over telephone.
Great. Yeah. So thank you for letting us know. So let's get into the topic, anxiety. As always, feel free to ask questions throughout, and we'll try and get to them as many as we can today. And we'll try and do our best to get to all the questions we can. If for some reason we can't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to us via email, and we'll put that information on there, and we'll try and get to it after the live stream is over. So before we start, though, we should probably kind of explain a disclaimer before we start talking about anxiety, if you want to share that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's important to note that it's not one size fits all, right? Like anything that we're covering over here is like pretty generalized. We'll be talking about anxiety in a broader general form, but that doesn't mean that everything can be applicable to like every situation, and it should be taken as like informational as well as educational purposes only.
Yeah. So, and I would suggest that if you feel that you are maybe experiencing some kind of more serious symptoms other than anxiety, maybe seek out professional help for
Absolutely.
that.
And also you're welcome to call our number, right? And like consult with our like receptionist, and she can help you pair up with the correct department. And we can also reach out to you for our intake assessment.
Yeah. Okay, so I see questions coming in, but before we get to that, I'd like to ask, so what is anxiety?
Yeah. What's anxiety? That's a big question, right?
Yeah.
I think generally speaking, anxiety could be just described as like excessive worry that really impacts you in one way or the other. But I wanted to, and I'll be touching upon this like more than once throughout the session, but I think it's important to note that you can't get rid of anxiety. It's not something to get rid of.
Oh.
So that's the approach that I wanted to emphasize. And it's also important to think of anxiety as a protective mechanism that's here to support you and not something to... So by thinking that I need to get rid of this feeling is actually going to backfire. Oh. Yeah, and I can talk about that more.
Oh, okay. So it's not something that we should be looking to get rid of.
No, it's actually what we need a lot.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Is it okay if I go in just a little bit more?
Yeah,
I think
of course.
So contemporary, like just people, right, in the contemporary times, like we're all anxious.
Right.
And it's actually kind of by like design in many ways because people with anxiety is like related to like survival mechanisms, and it's like something essentially that's there to like alarm you that something's happening over here that I have to be attentive about. So we need anxiety because like for people who like might be more risk takers, there's like actually it's funny because there is less likelihood of them surviving. So just by the genetic pool, if you think about it, just like process of elimination. So we are left with the people who are much more anxious because the people who might be risk takers might not have genetically survived.
I never even thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So thereby we live with a bunch of people who are really anxious, and there's a reason for that.
Oh,
so it's something that actually
interesting.
protects you and wants to like help you not get into risky situations. So a lot of today will be about like reframing anxiety.
Yeah. Very interesting. So then I guess what does anxiety look like, or can it look different to different
Definitely.
people?
Yes, that's a really good question. So I think anxiety, again, is like a big umbrella term, and it can look in a lot of different ways. Some people have like specific anxiety about specific situations or like things, for instance, like we know about people who have phobias, right? So people who might have, might be really worried and about like scared of flying, or like people who might be scared of like going into the ocean, or like spiders, for instance. Those are one type of anxiety. There's also social anxiety, people who might feel a lot of like nervousness, anxiety around being around other people or in like public speaking, those situations. There's also OCD, which is a little different, but it's based on compulsions. So it's having anxious thoughts around having to do something over and over. So for instance, like someone might feel the urge to like, I need to keep on checking the stove, right? I don't know if it's completely turned off, or having to like check the door as you are like leaving the house. Like, did I lock it correctly?
Is that to like help ease their anxiety?
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly. So that could be another form that like anxiety manifests, where like one of the more common one is like washing hands, right? Or like making sure that things are clean or orderly in a certain way. So that's another way that anxiety can manifest. Or there's also PTSD. There's also generalized anxiety disorder. So yeah, there's so many different kinds.
Okay, so are those all different kinds of anxiety?
Yes,
In just
absolutely.
different extremes, I guess?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. So if you think of anxiety as like a big umbrella term, those are all those like different branches that it can go out and manifest.
Okay, great. So then I guess, of course, adults can be anxious, but I've been seeing a lot of stories about how children are anxious as well these
Yeah.
days.
No, that's
Have
absolutely
you
true.
seen that as well?
That's
Or?
absolutely true. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things to be anxious about nowadays, especially for kids who grew up during COVID. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and people are just exposed to more things, right? We just scroll through, doom scroll every single day.
Right.
So, yes, children can definitely showcase anxiety.
Okay. Does that look differently in kids
Yeah.
as versus adults?
I think, yeah, I mean, so again, like think of anxiety as like umbrella term. It could manifest in so many different ways per different individual. But I think for kids, like some ways to detect would be if there's any changes in behaviors, right? If they're getting, so separation anxiety is one thing, right? Like kid getting really attached to a guardian and having a lot of like nervousness. Kids could also possibly go to the bathroom a lot, right? Like having to pee a lot or night sweats, for instance, or like eating habits changing or not wanting to go to school. And like, I think all of those things could be signs of anxiety. And I also, like, for instance, like some kids like gravitate towards like, I need to be on the phone, for instance. That could be a way to self-soothe anxiety. So there's so many different ways. It doesn't look the same. I think that's why each and everyone's different. And then we have to make sure that like every intervention is tailored to that individual.
Okay. So I do see some questions.
Sure.
From Summer, I did see your question, but we're going to get to that towards the end, so I'll readdress that question. We have another question. It says, do you have to receive therapy for anxiety, or can I just take medication to manage it?
That's a really good question. So I think that medication could be one way, but it's always with anything, it's most effective if like different kind of interventions are used together in tandem
Not just
with each
medication.
other. Correct. Yeah. And people have like different approaches to medication, right? Some are more averse to it, some are open to it, but like it's important to understand anxiety as like an alarm bell. It's here to protect you. It's basically saying that, hey, I want to be safe. I want to keep myself safe. So, which means that there's an underlying need underneath anxiety. So anxiety actually has a function.
Okay.
So thereby, if we just get rid of anxiety by medication, we'll never get to that bottom reason. So I think therapy is where it kicks in. We're there to understand like what are the underlying causes of anxiety, why is this person getting triggered. So I would always recommend different interventions getting used. And sometimes if you do therapy with I think like medication might not be even necessary too. Yeah.
So it's
that's
not,
a good question.
Yeah, so not necessarily trying to get rid of the symptoms of anxiety,
No.
but really trying to figure out what is causing it.
Absolutely.
Is probably a
yeah.
better.
And also, we can't, again, because we cannot get rid of anxiety because it's designed to protect you, right?
Right.
So the way that we can think of anxiety is framing it as, I think of it as externalize it. So this is not who you are necessarily, but this is an overactive, like really over-concerned friend who's trying to comfort you and just like getting in your way every single time and trying to protect you. So it's kind of like we have to tell the friend, like, hey friend, like I see that you're anxious. I see that you're worried about me, but I want you to understand like right now it's okay. You don't have to like worry about me right now. So having a better understanding of how anxiety functions with us and just think of it as like this is your companion, this is your friend who's trying to protect you, but the friend doesn't have to be out there every single time something happens. And I think once we have the dialogue with that very anxious friend internally, the frequency of it gets reduced too. So it's more about learning how to respond to anxiety and learning how to quell anxiety and tame it. That's more important.
Okay, great. So I do have another question here.
Yeah.
It says, 저는 걱정이 너무 많고 요가를 하고 명상을 해도 그때뿐이고 다시 걱정과 불안이 시작되는데 어쩌면 좋을까요?
네, 한국말로 할까요? 그러면요. 네네. 네, 지금 질문 너무 잘하셨고요. 요가와 명상은 좋은 방법이에요. 근데 참, so it's like really, 요가와 명상은 mindfulness하고 related 된 건데, like, it's helping you ground yourself back in your body. Because when 우리가 생각에만 깊게 있으면은, 그 걱정과 불안, 이거 생각만 생각하고 있으면은, 우리가 몸이 있다는 것 자체를 잊어버릴 때가 많거든요. 그러니까 뭔가 생각이 분리가 돼서. 그래서 그 요가랄지 명상은 우리가 우리 주변이 어떻게 있는지 우리가 내가 몸이 있다는 거를 다시 각인할 수 있는 그런 도구이기 때문에 되게 중요해요. 그래서 평상시에 많이 하면 좋지만 또 그것도 같이 다른 것도 같이 겸비해서 하면 좋을 것 같아요.
하루 종일 요가는 할 수 없으니까요.
그렇죠. 근데 좋은 방법이에요. 네. 그리고 또 이게 내가 걱정하는 게 그게 문제가 있나? 이렇게 생각해도 괜찮을 것 같아요. 나는 걱정이 있어도 괜찮아. 그러니까 무슨 말이냐면은 그 많은 사람들은 내가 걱정이 많아요. 근데 그것 때문에 또 걱정하게 돼요. 그러면 그냥 꼬리를 물고서 그냥 나는 걱정이 많은 사람이다. 난 왜 이렇게 걱정이 많지? 걱정하면 안 되는데 그렇게 계속 걱정하게 되거든요. 근데 걱정이 있어도 괜찮아. 왜냐면은 그거는 내가 나를 보호하려는 그 메커니즘이기 때문에 그래서 나를 스스로 더 많이 어셉트하고 그 anxiety에 대해서 조금 더 친절하게 나에게 대하게 되면은 그게 그 빈도도 줄어들게 돼요. 네.
Okay.
그래서 조금 이따 더 얘기를 할 수 있을 것 같습니다.
We'll go back to English. So what about in elderly population? Do you see anxiety in elderly population?
Yes, so that's also really interesting because in elderly populations, especially within Korean populations, oftentimes it comes up as like somatic expressions. So
Could you explain what? Yeah,
absolutely. What I mean by that is oftentimes our elderly population might go to their general practitioner. So they go to their GP.
Oh, because they think it's a physical thing.
Absolutely. So especially with Korean population or a lot of ethnic population who might not have been very used to like mental health services, they might express something that's kind of vague that's related to a physical symptom. So it could look like I have a weird like tummy ache or like a tingliness in my throat, for instance, or like I have this like throbbing headache. But so they're describing some kind of physical sensation, but they go to 내과, they go to the general practitioner and they say, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. This might be anxiety. So that's how they get, a lot of our elders like go to their general practitioner first and then come here saying that, hey, I've checked it out. They said, like, my doctor said I'm okay. But, like, they say this is symptoms of anxiety. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, like, people might have, like, digestive issues or, like, muscle tensions, right? Those could all be actually anxiety, right? And because our body and mind is, like, the same thing. So one impacts the other. So cardiovascular issues, like heart like beating, heart racing, for instance, all of those things.
Interesting. So then, I guess then if you're not sure if it's one or the other, would you suggest going to the doctor first just in case it is something else?
I think one or the other, right? Whatever you feel more comfortable in. I mean, I think the fact that like the individual's noticing something's up, I think that's the main thing. So yeah, like reaching out for help is always a good thing.
Okay, great. So then my next question is, can anxiety start at any age? Or is it something that you're just naturally born with? Because I think I'm naturally an anxious person, but since I was young.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there could be a lot of different factors. To answer the first part, yes, I think anxiety can start at any age, right? Kids might have anxiety, or it can start a little later. Although there are a couple of forms of anxiety that happens more with adolescents, for instance, like PTSD or like panic disorders. That might happen more as like kids age a little bit, not like super young kids. But I think there's also, there could be genetic component, right? Like you mentioned, people could be just like naturally disposed to be more anxious. But I also think that there's other stressful events, for instance, or like life events, or there could be like, like natural disasters or there could be so many, or socialization, or like trauma that could all impact like whether someone experiences anxiety or not.
Okay. So then I guess, how would I tell the difference between anxiety and stress or me just overthinking things? Like what, could that all be the same thing or could they be different?
Yeah, I think that's also a really good question so the main indicator to differentiate what is anxiety or like anxiety disorder versus like am I just overthinking could be, or stress is like sort of duration too. Like stress could be a reason for anxiety, I think. And anxiety could be if that is persistent enough, that is impeding in your daily functioning, right? It could be an overthinker, but think of it this way. Sometimes the way in which that we are anxious can be helpful for you. Like, and what I mean by that is it can help you be more prepared, right? Because I'm an anxious person, I'm like double checking, triple checking my work, right? And I'm gonna like do like a mock-up presentation before. It could also help with alertness because you have that little bit of anxiety. Adrenaline rush can also help you. You could be more punctual. So there's a lot of things that can help with
So
having
not always
anxiety.
bad.
No, but I think that, like, and again, right, anyone and everyone has anxiety to a certain extent, right? But it becomes an issue when you determine that it's an issue. So for instance, if it's impeding in your way of going through daily activities, or am I so socially anxious that I'm avoiding any gatherings, right? Am I canceling everything because I'm like, I don't want to deal with it because this is not, I'm going to have like a really bad time. So I think those are the times that we have to check ourselves, but I don't necessarily think that having anxiety, again, like the point is to normalize it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we do have another question.
Yes.
아이가 약간 기분이 항상 다운돼 보이는데 아동 우울증으로 볼 수 있나요? So could we view that as childhood depression? Which I heard is also on the rise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think depressive episodes, right? Depression is, think of it as like, rather than an identity, like think of it as like this is a phase, or like this is like this is something you go through. I think it might be a little easier to think of it that way. So it's like, yes, we can have depressive episodes, but that doesn't have to be, I'm a depressed person necessarily. I hope that helps.
Could it be maybe the age of the child too? Like depending on the age of the child, 아이가 몇 살인지 모르지만 그 나이 따라 좀 사춘기 하면 뭐 다운할 수도 있고요. 뭐
조금 더 자세한 내용을 좀 알려주실 수 있을까요? 그 부분에 대해서는.
We'll see if she answers back.
I feel like it's a little.
Yeah.
I would love to hear more details for us to give a more specific answer.
So then on that topic then, is anxiety different from depression or yeah.
Yeah, anxiety is different from depression because think of anxiety as this like worry that I cannot control. Depression is more like constant state of like sadness, for instance.
Okay.
However, they go hand in hand. So I would say like maybe like 60% of those who experience severe anxiety also struggle with depression and vice versa. So they could be coexisting things, but they're not exactly the same.
Okay. So then I guess can anxiety lead in that following up with that, then can anxiety lead to other mental health issues?
Yeah,
in that sense?
absolutely. There's so many different ways that anxiety can. Anxiety is like, let's think of it as an ingredient that leads to many other kinds of diseases, whether it be related to mental health or physical health. So, I mean, again, like I mentioned, there's like generalized anxiety disorders, like panic attacks, panic disorders, like OCD, there's PTSD, but it can also, those are just within the mental health, but it can also lead to other physical symptoms and physical ailments, such as like it can lead to cardiovascular health, like muscular health, like you might have weakened immune system, you might have chronic pain. So all of those things could be due to anxiety.
Okay.
So it's one of the ingredient, but is it
because you didn't learn how to cope with it and it gets worse? Is that kind of, or is it just it could lead to other illnesses?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good thing that you're asking because, for instance, like people with anxiety can also develop like substance use issues. So that could be an example of like maladaptive coping mechanism. So yeah.
Okay. So I do see another question. 안녕하세요. 요즘 저희 엄마 때문에 고민이 많았는데 이렇게 질문 드릴 수 있게 되어서 감사하네요. 저희 엄마가 한두 시간 단위로 기분이 왔다 갔다 하세요. 어떻게 도와드려야 할지도 모르겠고 걱정만 앞서네요. 우울증이실까요? 제 한국말 잘 못합니다.
아니요, 잘하고 계세요. 네. 일단은 여러 가지 제가 또 질문을 드리고 싶은 부분이 있는데, 거기에서 이게 얼마나 오랫동안 지속되었는지 그것도 궁금하고요. 또 왔다 갔다 하는 기분이 어떤, 예를 들어 외부의 문제가 있었다. 예를 봐요. 뭐 갑자기 큰 일을 겪으셨다? 그러면 굉장히 당연한 그런 결과라고 생각을 해요. 그래서, 근데 그게 지속적으로 그 상황에 맞지 않는 정도로 기분이 왔다 갔다 하신다든지 아니면은 특히 딱히 무슨 일이 없었는데 또 그러시다든지 아니면 무슨 큰일이 있어서 그러셔도 그게 굉장히 오랫동안 지속된다면은 상담이랄지 다른 방안을 찾으시는 것도 좋다고 생각을 해요. 네.
네, 좋네요. So then, I guess the questions are actually really helpful coming in because it's kind of leading me to my questions is, so when do I need to seek help for anxiety?
Exactly. I think this question kind of leads to your question too. So asking yourself, like, am I not engaging with the things that I once enjoyed? So for instance, am I no longer socializing? Am I no longer engaging my hobbies? So it could be like one question that you can ask to see, is this a major issue? Or is this just a normal level anxiety? Because again, like we all have normal levels of anxiety.
Right.
We all have like ups and downs, and we all have sad days and like upset days, right? But is it overtaking your life? Are you consumed with anxious thoughts like all day long that you cannot get to anything? Or are you avoiding people as a result of? I think those are things that you can ask.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Okay, great. So then I think before we close out today's stream, I definitely wanted to get to Summer's question, which what I wanted to end as well is, Summer asked, hello, is there a simple way to ease my daily anxiety?
Yeah.
So if there's any tips that you can give us about how to
Absolutely.
deal with anxiety?
Absolutely. So being kind, one is like, again, normalize anxiety. So let me give you an example. So if I tell you that, like, don't think of green apple, what comes up in your mind?
Green apple.
Right, exactly. So we can't tell, like, don't be anxious because that's not going to do anything. But it's more like accept the fact that anxiety is a normal part of our life. But then how do I respond to it? Or like, what is this anxiety trying to tell me? I think thinking about that can lead to a different outcome. So one is definitely be kind to yourself and your anxiety. So frame it in a different way. It's like, this is a friend who's really just like overly worried about me all the time. It's like, this friend is trying to get in front of me and protect me, but like, you have to tell a friend, like, it's okay, like I can handle this, you know, like I got this, and you don't have to like really overstep right now. And that is going to change the way in which that you view anxiety and also control how frequent it pops up in your life. So that's one major one that I wanted to emphasize. You can't get rid of it, but you can tame it. And two is, as for really simple, quick methods when you're having bursts of anxiety and those are really just for short term. So like, I want to let you know that it might be only effective in that moment for like 5 minutes or so, right? But it's something that can help you snap out of it and redirect your energy to something else. So one thing is they mentioned about breathing exercises a lot. And that's because it is shifting our mind from obsessing over thought from remembering that we have a body and we also have senses. So the breathing technique that oftentimes is used is the 4-7-8 method.
Okay.
So you breathe in for 4 seconds, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold it for 7 seconds, and then breathe out for 8 seconds. That's one.
Okay.
But one thing to remember is that you have to do this on a regular basis, even when you're not anxious, because it's really hard to do this when you are having like a panic attack, right? So that's why, for instance, like a lot of people get overwhelmed, like I can't breathe, right? So they get overwhelmed even more so when you're having a panic attack. So you have to practice this like on a regular basis for this to be something that can prevent, you know, having anxiety attacks. That's a major one. There's another method it's really common, called 5-4-3-2-1.
Okay.
And again, that's focusing on the senses, which is, can you identify 5 things that you see around you? So like the lamp, this cup, this doll, like this piece of paper, and this pen, for instance. And then you ask that person to, or like you tell yourself to like touch 4 things. So like I'm touching this mug, touching this paper, touching this doll, touching this couch, right? So they all have different texture. And the third one is, 3 is identify 3 things that you can hear.
Okay.
Right. So what do I hear? The birds outside, like the light, the noise of the nice light bulb, for instance. 2 things that you can smell. This tea, like the flowers, for instance, and 1 thing that you can taste. So that's a really quick way to just focus more on your body and body regulation. Another way is, again, like changing the body chemistry. And quick way to do that is taking a hot shower, cold shower, going for a brisk walk, changing your environment, do a quick exercise. All of those things can help you again, like shift from focusing in the mind from just the body. So those are some ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish we could talk more about this, but we are very limited on time today.
went
So
so
we'll just,
fast.
yeah, I thank you for like opening my
Absolutely.
eyes to a different way of looking at anxiety that I
Yeah.
never thought of.
And so it can really build resilience,
yeah.
and it can also build our like relationships in many ways when we like start opening up and like talk to other people and be vulnerable about it.
Yeah.
And it can really like increase in resilience. So it's not something to be shunned, but like we have to have like just closer dialogue with anxiety.
So I did see Erin did follow up, but we are out of time. So if you would like, please email us and we'll try and get back to you
email back.
with the response on
Definitely.
that. Our next live stream will be on April 16th. So for now, we'll say goodbye with our closing. Okay.
Yes.
Ready? 1, 2. Bye from KFAM.
KFAM. Thank you for being here. Thank you for
Bye.
making your time.